Some stories arrive when we least expect them. This one came to me through someone whose life was changed by a December afternoon, a hospital parking lot, and a mother who had nothing left except her love. I share it now because I believe we need reminders that even in our coldest seasons, grace has a way of finding us uninvited. This is for anyone who has ever sat alone, engine off, wondering what comes next. For anyone who has felt invisible. Sometimes the smallest creatures teach us the biggest lessons about showing up when it matters most. The scraping came first. Richard Thornton heard it before he saw anything, a wet, dragging sound against frozen asphalt. He had been sitting in the hospital parking lot for 23 minutes, hands still gripping the steering wheel of a car that was going nowhere. Eleanor's death certificate lay on the passenger seat, the funeral home receipt beside it. Snow fell in lazy spirals through the gray December dusk. He looked up. A German shepherd, what remained of one, pulled herself across the icy ground toward his Bentley. Her left front leg dragged at an angle that made his stomach turn. Ribs jutted beneath matted fur. In her mouth, she carried something small, motionless, dusted with white. She reached his front tire, stopped, lowered the bundle to the ground. A puppy, 3 weeks old. Maybe less, not moving. The mother dog looked up through the windshield, locked eyes with Richard, not begging, waiting. If this opening touched something in your heart, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Sometimes knowing we are not alone makes all the difference. The heater had been off for 20 minutes. Richard could see his breath now, small clouds that vanished against the windshield. Eleanor's reading glasses sat in the center console, right where she had left them 3 weeks ago. The last time she had been well enough to ride in the car, her lavender hand cream was still in the door pocket. He had not moved it, could not bring himself to. The scent of her was fading from the leather seats. He had noticed it this morning, or maybe yesterday. The days had started bleeding together. 11 days since room 412. 11 days since the machines stopped their beeping and the nurses stopped their bustling and everything went so terribly, impossibly quiet. His phone sat on the dashboard, 3 texts from his children, all unread. Michael had sent flowers to the service. Rebecca had sent a message with a heart emoji. Thomas had not responded at all. 42 years of marriage, 3 children, a company worth more than most small countries. And Richard Thornton sat alone in a parking lot because he could not face the silence of his own house. The key to the Westbrook mansion pressed against his thigh through his coat pocket. 12,000 square feet. 5 acres. Eleanor had designed every room herself, the kitchen with its farmhouse sink, the study with its leather chairs, the bedroom where she had taken her last breath before the hospital. He had been sleeping in the guest room since when he slept at all. Don't disappear into that house. Richard, her voice, clear as the day she had said it, tubes in her arms, eyes already going distant. Promise me. He had not promised. He had held her hand and said nothing. Now he sat in parking lots and diners and anywhere that was not home, running out the clock until exhaustion dragged him back. The engine ticked as it cooled. Snow accumulated on the hood. Richard reached for the ignition. That was when he heard the scraping. He looked up, and a pair of amber eyes met his through the glass. The dog stood there, shaking violently, a motionless bundle at her feet. She did not look away, neither did he. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a question formed that he could not shake. Why did she come to me? Richard's hand moved before his mind caught up. The door handle, cold chrome under his fingers. A click, and then the December air hit him like a fist to the chest. 26 degrees, maybe less, the kind of cold that crawled into your lungs and stayed there. He stepped out of the Bentley, his leather shoes crunching on the thin layer of snow. The dog did not move, did not flinch, just watched him with those amber eyes. Her body trembling so hard he could see the vibrations from 6 feet away. Up close, she was worse than he had thought. A German shepherd, he could tell from the shape of her head. The set of her ears, but wrong. All wrong. Her ribs were not just visible. They jutted out like fingers beneath the matted brown and black fur. Her hip bones protruded at sharp angles. She should have weighed 70 pounds. She looked half that. And the leg? Richard's stomach turned. The left front leg hung at an angle that defied anatomy, swollen to twice its normal size, the fur around it crusted with something dark. Dried blood? Maybe. Or infection. The joint bent where no joint should be. She had been walking on that, dragging herself across frozen asphalt, in the snow, carrying a puppy in her mouth. How far? How long he knelt slowly, the cold seeping through his $4,000 cashmere coat, soaking into his knees. The parking lot's concrete bit through the fabric. Easy, he heard himself say. Easy, girl. The dog's nostrils flared. She was smelling him, reading him the way dogs do, cataloging his uncertainty, his grief, whatever else lingered on his skin. Then her gaze dropped to the bundle at her feet. The puppy. Richard looked down. A male, he thought. Tiny. 3 weeks old. Maybe less. Eyes barely slits. Fur that might have been golden once. Now gray with cold and damp. The small body was not moving. He reached out, slowly. His fingers touched the puppy's side. Cold. So cold it shocked him, like touching a stone that had been sitting in snow. But they're faint. Barely there, a flutter against his fingertips. A heartbeat, weak and thready, but real. He's alive, Richard whispered. The mother dog exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to empty her entire body. Her back legs wobbled. Richard moved faster now. He unzipped his coat, pulled it open, and tucked the puppy inside against his chest. The small body pressed against his shirt, against skin that was warm and alive. He could feel the faint heartbeat now, tapping against his own ribs. The mother watched every movement. Her eyes tracked the puppy until it disappeared into the folds of cashmere. Then she looked up at Richard's face. Something passed between them. He could not name it, did not try. He transferred the puppy from coat to sweater, feeling the tiny body settle against his stomach. Then he shrugged off the heavy cashmere entirely. The cold attacked his arms, his shoulders, but he ignored it. He wrapped the coat around the dog's broken body, careful of the leg, careful of the wounds he could now see crisscrossing her back. Scars? Old ones, layered over each other like a map of suffering. Belt marks. He recognized the pattern. He had seen it once before, on a horse at a farm he had considered buying 20 years ago. He had walked away from that deal. Someone had done this to her, not once, many times. She did not growl when he lifted her, did not snap or struggle. She just went limp in his arms, trusting him completely, as if she had spent the last of her strength getting here and had nothing left. She weighed nothing. 45 pounds. Maybe a hollow shell of what she should have been. Richard carried her to the car. His arms shook not from the weight, but from something else, something he could not examine right now. He laid her across the back seat, adjusting the coat around her. Her eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow but steady. The puppy stirred against his chest. A weak mewling sound, barely audible. Richard slid behind the wheel. His hands fumbled with his phone. The screen was too bright in the gray dusk. Emergency vet, Westbrook, Connecticut, 3 results. The first one, Westbrook Animal Clinic. 3.2 miles away. He started the engine. The Bentley roared to life, warm air blasting from the vents. He pulled out of the parking spot too fast, tires slipping on the snow, then catching. In the rearview mirror, the dog's eyes had opened again. She was watching him, watching the road, watching everything. The puppy's heartbeat tapped against Richard's chest. Faster now, or was that his own? He ran a red light on Main Street. Did not care. Did not slow down. The clinic appeared on the right, a low brick building with a blue sign. Lights still on inside. Richard pulled into the lot at an angle, taking up 2 spaces, and was out of the car before the engine finished dying. He gathered the dog in his arms. The puppy pressed against him, hidden beneath his sweater. The clinic's front door, glass, heavy. He kicked it open. The receptionist, young, startled, looked up from her desk. "I need help." Richard's voice cracked on the last word. "Please, I need help." The young woman's eyes went wide. She was looking at the blood on his shirt, the dog in his arms, the desperation on his face. She reached for the phone. And somewhere in the back of the clinic, a door opened. A woman emerged from the back hallway. Mid-50s, silver-streaked hair pulled into a practical knot. No makeup, no jewelry except for a wedding ring hanging on a chain around her neck. She took one look at the dog in Richard's arms and her expression shifted. Professional calm giving way to something harder, grimmer. "Exam room 2, now." Richard followed her down a narrow corridor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The floor was linoleum, scuffed from years of foot traffic, and it squeaked under his wet shoes. The exam room was small, stainless steel table in the center, cabinets along the walls, a poster about heartworm prevention taped to the door. It smelled like antiseptic and something else, the faint copper tang of old blood. "Put her here." The woman patted the table. Gently. Richard lowered the dog onto the cold metal surface. She did not react. Her eyes had closed again, her breathing shallow and rapid. "How long has she been like this?" The woman was already moving, hands probing the dog's body, checking pulse points, lifting lips to examine gums. 20 minutes, maybe less. I found her in the hospital parking lot. Found her. She came to my car, put the puppy at my feet." The woman paused, looked up at him for the first time. Her eyes were gray, sharp, assessing. "There's a puppy." Richard pulled open his sweater. The small bundle stirred against his chest, letting out a weak cry that sounded more like a wheeze. "Give him to me." He handed over the puppy. The woman cradled it in one hand while continuing to examine the mother with the other. Her movements were efficient, practiced. She had done this 1,000 times. "I'm Dr. Hoffman," she said without looking up. "Claire Hoffman. I own this clinic." "Thornton. Richard Thornton." A flicker of recognition crossed her face. Everyone in Westbrook knew the name, but she did not comment, just kept working. "The mother is severely malnourished, dehydrated. The leg is a compound fracture, badly infected. These wounds on her back are old. Weeks, maybe months." Her fingers traced the scars Richard had noticed earlier. Someone beat her, repeatedly. Richard's jaw tightened. He said nothing. "She's also been nursing, or was. Infection has set in there too." Claire moved to the puppy, checking its tiny body with the same clinical precision. "This one is hypothermic. Dehydrated, but more stable than I expected. Will they make it?" Claire straightened, met his eyes. "The puppy has a chance. He's weak, but puppies can surprise you." She paused. "The mother needs surgery. Tonight, the leg, the infection, probably a blood transfusion. Even then, I cannot promise anything. She might not survive until morning." Richard heard the words, processed them, felt something shift in his chest. "Do it." "Mr. Thornton, the cost—" "I don't care what it costs." Claire studied him. The blood on his shirt, the snow melting in his hair, the way his hands had not stopped shaking since he walked through the door. "She came to me." His voice sounded strange in his own ears. "I'm not walking away from that." Claire held his gaze for a long moment, then she nodded once, turned to the intercom on the wall, and pressed the button. "Jenny, Prepper 2, emergency surgery, and get the incubator ready. We have a critical neonate." The next hours blurred at the edges. Richard sat in the waiting room on a plastic chair that creaked every time he shifted his weight. The television on the wall played local news on mute. The coffee from the vending machine tasted like it had been sitting since morning. Bitter and burnt. He drank 3 cups anyway. His phone buzzed. Harold Webb, 4 missed calls now. A text from Michael. "Dad, the funeral arrangements. Do you need me to fly in?" Richard typed back. "No, I've got it handled." He did not mention the dogs. Did not know how to explain what he was doing here, in a veterinary clinic at 9 o'clock at night, waiting to find out if a stray would survive. Rebecca had not called. Thomas had not responded to anything in weeks. The clock on the wall ticked. 10 o'clock. 10:30. 11 o'clock. Richard thought about Eleanor. She would have been on the floor with that dog, talking to her, singing those old hymns she loved. She would have named the puppy already something hopeful, something that meant more than it should. "You see deals. Richard, I see souls." She had said that once, years ago, during an argument he could not even remember now. He had dismissed it, too sentimental, too soft for the world he operated in. Maybe she had been right all along. At 11:47, the door to the back hallway opened. Claire emerged. Her scrubs were stained, her face was tired, but something in her posture had loosened. "The puppy is responding to fluids. He's stable," Richard exhaled. He had not realized he had been holding his breath. "And the mother, she's in surgery. The leg was worse than I thought. Infection had reached the bone. We're trying to save it, but—" Claire trailed off. "She's fighting. That's all I can tell you right now. Can I wait?" "It's going to be hours. You should go home. Get some sleep." "No." Claire paused. Richard looked at her. Really looked. The wedding ring on its chain. The lines around her eyes that spoke of long nights and hard losses. "I've got an empty house and a bottle of scotch waiting for me," he said quietly. "This is better." Something shifted in Claire's expression. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of something familiar. "I'll bring you real coffee," she said. "The machine stuff is terrible." She disappeared back through the door. Richard settled into the plastic chair, closed his eyes. The fluorescent lights hummed. The vending machine clicked and whirred in the corner. At 4:23 in the morning, Claire appeared again. "She made it." Richard opened his eyes. He had dozed off without meaning to, neck stiff, back aching from the hard plastic. "The leg. We saved it. Barely. She'll have a permanent limp, but she'll walk." Claire leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "She's awake now, weak, but awake, and she keeps looking toward the door." "Looking for the puppy," Claire nodded slowly. "Can I see her?" She led him down the hallway to a small recovery room in the back. The lights were dimmed. Machines beeped softly in the darkness. The dog lay on a padded table. IV line in her front leg. Bandages wrapped around her torso. Her eyes were open. When Richard stepped into the room, her head turned toward him. She recognized him. He could see it in the way her body relaxed, the way her tail thin, matted, gave a single weak thump against the table. Richard moved closer, let his hand rest on her head. between her ears. "Hey, girl," he whispered. "You made it." She exhaled, that same long, shuddering breath from the parking lot. "She needs a name," Claire said from the doorway. Richard stroked the dog's fur, thought about the scars on her back, the leg that would never fully heal, the puppies she had lost because there had been others. He was certain of it now. "Does she have one already?" "A microchip?" Claire nodded slowly. "We scanned her earlier. I was going to tell you in the morning." Richard turned. "She's registered to a place called Hawthorne Kennels. They contract dogs out to nursing homes as therapy animals." Claire's voice had gone flat. "Careful." "Her name is Sasha. She was placed at Sunrise Meadows Senior Living." Richard looked at Sasha, at the scars, the broken leg, the hollow spaces where her ribs showed through. What happened to her? Claire did not answer. She did not have to. 4 days later, Richard carried Sasha through the front door of the Westbrook mansion. The house swallowed them in silence. 12,000 square feet of hardwood floors and vaulted ceilings and rooms that had not been used in months. Eleanor's touch was everywhere: the farmhouse sink she had insisted on, the reading nook by the bay window, the gallery wall of family photographs stretching down the main hallway. Richard had not looked at those photographs since the funeral. Sasha's ears pricked forward, her nostrils flared, taking in the unfamiliar scents: lemon wood polish, the faint trace of Eleanor's perfume still clinging to the curtains, the staleness of air that had not been properly circulated. She had been in institutions her whole life: kennels, nursing homes, places with linoleum floors and fluorescent lights and the constant shuffle of strangers. This much space unsettled her. "It's okay," Richard said. His voice echoed off the walls. "You're home now." The word felt strange in his mouth. Home. He had stopped thinking of this place that way 11 days ago. He carried her to the study, Eleanor's favorite room, with its leather chairs and built-in bookshelves and the stone fireplace that crackled on cold nights. He had already prepared a bed near the hearth, old blankets layered thick. A bowl of water within reach, the medications Claire had prescribed lined up on the side table. Hope was already there, in a cardboard box lined with towels and a hot water bottle wrapped in flannel. The puppy had gained weight in the past 4 days, not much, but enough. His eyes were fully open now, bright and curious, tracking movement around the room. Richard lowered Sasha onto the blankets. She tried to stand immediately, her bandaged leg buckling, and he had to ease her back down. "Stay," he said. "Rest." She ignored him. Her attention was fixed on the box. On Hope? Richard lifted the puppy and placed him beside her. Sasha sniffed him thoroughly: ears, belly, paws, then began to lick his face with slow, deliberate strokes. Hope squirmed closer, burrowing into the warmth of her fur. Something loosened in Richard's chest. A knot he had not known was there. He sat down in the leather chair across from them. Eleanor's chair was to his left. Empty. The indent of her body still visible in the cushion. He did not look at it. "Claire says you had 3 puppies," he said quietly. "This one's the only survivor." Sasha's ears twitched. She kept licking Hope. "I don't know what happened to the others. I'm not sure I want to." The fire crackled. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, soft flakes drifting past the windows. Richard leaned back in the chair. Exhaustion pulled at his bones. He had barely slept in 4 days, catching fragments of rest in clinic waiting rooms and the front seat of his car, but he did not want to leave. Not yet. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. "I've never had a dog. Eleanor always wanted one. But I said no. Too much work. Too much mess." Sasha looked up at him, those amber eyes, steady and patient. "She would have loved you. Both of you." He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, gray morning light was filtering through the windows. He had actually slept for the first time in nearly 2 weeks. His neck was stiff, his back ached from the awkward position, and his mouth tasted sour. But he had slept. Sasha was watching him. She had not moved from her spot. Hope still tucked against her side. Her tail gave a single thump when she saw his eyes open. "Morning," Richard said. His voice was rough, unused. He stood, joints popping, and walked to the kitchen. The grocery list was still on the refrigerator, Eleanor's handwriting. Her last entry, lemons. He stared at it for a long moment, then pulled open the fridge. Eggs, butter, a block of cheese going hard at the edges. He had been living on takeout and scotch for 11 days, and it showed. He scrambled 2 eggs, made toast, poured orange juice that was probably past its date but did not smell wrong. Ate standing at the counter because sitting at the table alone felt worse. Then he prepared Sasha's medication, 3 pills. Morning and evening, plus an antibiotic cream for her wounds, and warmed a bottle of formula for Hope. The first attempt at feeding the puppy went badly. Richard tested the formula on his wrist the way Claire had shown him. Too hot. He hissed, shook his hand, ran it under cold water, tried again. Still too warm. Third time, finally acceptable. Hope latched onto the bottle immediately. Sucking with surprising strength for something so small, Richard cradled him in one hand, angling the bottle with the other, watching the tiny throat work. "You're hungry," he said. "Good. That's good." The puppy's eyes closed in contentment. His paws needed the air. Giving Sasha her pills was another matter entirely. Richard tried hiding the first one in a piece of cheese. She ate the cheese, spat out the pill. He tried peanut butter. Same result. Bread. Rejected. A piece of scrambled egg. The pill rolled across the hardwood floor, wet with dog saliva. Richard stared at it, stared at Sasha. She stared back, utterly unrepentant. "You're smarter than half the lawyers I've hired," he muttered. He retrieved the pill, wiped it off, and tried a new approach, opening her mouth manually and placing the pill as far back on her tongue as he could reach. This earned him a look of profound betrayal. But she swallowed. "We're going to do this twice a day," Richard told her. "You might as well get used to it." Her tail thumped once, agreement or defiance, he could not tell. The days developed a rhythm. 5:30 in the morning. Wake up. Sasha needed to go outside, and her internal clock was merciless. 6:00 medications. Feed Hope. Clean Sasha's wounds. Claire had taught him how, showing him the proper way to change bandages, apply antiseptic, check for signs of infection. 7:00. His own breakfast. For the first time in weeks, Richard sat at the kitchen table. It felt less empty with Sasha lying at his feet and Hope wobbling around on the floor. Investigating chair legs. 8 o'clock to noon. Short walks for Sasha, limited by her healing leg, trips to the clinic for checkups, puppy feedings every 4 hours, which meant Richard's schedule now revolved around a creature that weighed less than 3 pounds. He talked to them constantly, not commands conversations, about Eleanor, about his children, about deals he had made decades ago, acquisitions that had seemed so important at the time and now felt like smoke. Sasha listened. She had a way of tilting her head when he spoke, as if she understood more than she should. Claire had mentioned that therapy dogs were trained to read people, to sense moods and respond accordingly. Richard found himself saying things to Sasha that he had not said to anyone. "I wasn't there enough," he admitted one evening, sitting by the fire with Hope asleep in his lap. "When the kids were growing up, I told myself I was building something for them, the company, the money, the security, but I was building it for me. They knew it. Eleanor knew it. Sasha's ears twitched. She never said anything. That was Eleanor. She'd make excuses for me, smooth things over, keep the family together, and I let her. He stroked Hope's sleeping form. Now, she's gone, and they don't call. Can't blame them. Really. I taught them that's how it works. You prioritize what matters. I showed them I didn't. The fire crackled. Sasha rose from her bed slowly, favoring her leg, and crossed to Richard's chair. She laid her head on his knee. Richard's hand found her ear, scratched gently. "You're good at this," he said. "Better than most people I know." She exhaled, a warm, heavy breath against his leg. On the 10th day, Harold Webb showed up unannounced. Richard answered the door in clothes he had been wearing for 2 days, stubble on his chin, a dish towel thrown over his shoulder. Harold stared. "Good Lord," he said. "Richard Thornton picking up after dogs in his Italian loafers. They're American, Cole Haan. That's supposed to make it better." Harold stepped inside, looking around. "Where's the scotch? You look like you need a drink." "I definitely need a drink." "In the study, but I haven't touched it in a week." Harold stopped mid-stride, turned. "You haven't touched scotch in a week." "Been busy." As if on cue, Hope came barreling around the corner, all oversized paws and floppy ears, and crashed directly into Harold's ankles. The puppy sat back, dazed, then began enthusiastically licking Harold's shoes. "What in the—" Harold looked down, looked at Richard. "When did you get a dog?" "2 dogs. The mother's in the study." Richard led him through the house. Sasha lifted her head when they entered, assessed Harold with a long look, then lowered it again. Apparently he passed inspection. "Ellie would have had a field day with this," Harold said softly. "She would have adopted 10 more by now." Harold settled into one of the leather chairs, studied his oldest friend with the careful attention of someone who had known him for 40 years. "How you holding up, really?" Richard did not answer, just looked at Sasha and Hope. Harold nodded slowly. "Yeah, okay. I think I get it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. 2 old men, a fire, and 2 dogs that had shown up uninvited. "There's something I need to look into," Richard said finally. "The dog Sasha, she was a therapy animal, registered to a breeding operation called Hawthorne Kennels, placed at Sunrise Meadows. The nursing home. Someone beat her. Harold. For months, from the look of the scars, then dumped her when she got pregnant." Richard's jaw tightened. "I want to know who, and I want to know why." Harold leaned forward. "Richard, don't tell me to let it go." "I wasn't going to." Harold's eyes were sharp now, the eyes of a man who had built a law firm from nothing before selling it for 9 figures. "I was going to ask what you need. Information first, then maybe a lawyer, the kind that makes people nervous." 2 days later, Richard drove to Sunrise Meadows Senior Living. The facility sat on 12 acres of manicured grounds, rolling lawns, stone pathways, flower beds dormant for winter. The building itself was colonial revival, white columns and black shutters, designed to look like a country estate rather than a place where people went to fade away. Richard parked in the visitor lot and walked through the front entrance. The lobby smelled like lavender air freshener and industrial cleaning solution. Soft music played from hidden speakers. A young woman at the reception desk looked up with a practiced smile. "Welcome to Sunrise Meadows. How can I help you today?" "I need to speak with someone about your therapy animal program." The smile flickered. "I'm sorry. Therapy animals. Dogs. You had one named Sasha, German Shepherd." The receptionist's face went pale. Her eyes darted to a hallway on the left, then back to Richard. You'll need to speak with Mr. Crane, our administrator. Let me see if he's available." She picked up the phone, murmured something Richard could not hear, nodded once, twice. "Mr. Crane will see you now. Down the hall. Last door on the right." The office was large and aggressively cheerful, motivational posters on the walls, family photos arranged on the desk, a golf trophy displayed on the bookshelf. The man behind the desk stood as Richard entered. Victor Crane was 58. Tan, silver-haired in a way that suggested expensive maintenance. His smile was wide and did not reach his eyes. "Mr. Thornton, I recognize your name, big donor to the hospital foundation. Yes, please. Have a seat." Richard remained standing. "I found one of your therapy dogs, Sasha, German Shepherd, broken leg, starving, pregnant." Victor's smile stayed fixed, but something shifted behind it. "That animal was released from our program. Budget reallocation, very unfortunate. Released. She was dumped. Someone beat her. Mr. Thornton, I don't appreciate. She had 3 puppies. 2 of them died." Richard's voice was flat, controlled. "Where?" "Victor. Behind a dumpster. In a field somewhere." Victor's smile finally cracked. "I think this meeting is over. I want records, vet records, transfer papers, whatever documentation you have. Those are confidential." Richard stepped closer to the desk. He had spent 40 years in negotiations, hostile takeovers, union disputes, deals that made grown men weep. He knew how to read a room. He knew how to apply pressure. "Then I'll find a lawyer who can make them unconfidential," he said quietly. "And maybe a reporter who thinks it's an interesting story." Victor's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake. Mr. Thornton, over a dog." Richard leaned forward, palms flat on the polished wood. "You know what my wife used to say. You can tell a lot about a man by how he treats something that can't fight back." He straightened. "I've seen how you treat them." He walked out without looking back. Outside, the cold air hit his face. His hands were shaking not from fear, but from something older, harder. He pulled out his phone, dialed Harold. "I need that lawyer," he said. "The kind that makes people nervous. And start digging into a place called Hawthorne Kennels." He hung up. Across the parking lot, a black SUV sat idling in the visitor section. Through the tinted windows, Richard could just make out a figure watching him. The SUV's engine revved once. Then it pulled away, disappearing around the corner of the building. Christmas morning arrived without ceremony. Richard woke at 5:17 to Sasha's nose pressing against his hand. She needed to go out. Her internal clock did not care about holidays. He pulled on a robe and slippers, opened the back door, and stood on the porch while she limped across the snow-covered lawn. The sky was still dark, stars fading at the edges. His breath fogged in the cold air. First Christmas without Eleanor in 42 years. The tree stood in the living room. She had decorated it in November. Before the pain got too bad. Before the hospital became inevitable. Red and gold ornaments, white lights, the angel on top that her mother had given them as a wedding present. Richard had not turned the lights on since she died. He made coffee, fed Hope, who was growing fast now, his legs still too long for his body. Changed Sasha's bandages, gave her the morning medications. The routine had become automatic over the past 2 weeks, a structure that held the days together. At 9:15, his phone rang. "Michael, Merry Christmas. Dad?" Richard sat down in Eleanor's chair. He had not meant to, his body just moved there. "Merry Christmas. Sorry, I couldn't make it out. Work's been insane. The Hong Kong deal is falling apart, and the board wants—" Michael stopped himself. "Anyway, you doing okay?" "I'm fine." A pause. Richard could hear other voices in the background, Michael's wife, the grandchildren he barely knew. Okay, good. Listen, I gotta run. The in-laws are here. Talk later. He would not call later. They both knew it. Sure. The line went dead. At 10:30, Rebecca called, children screaming in the background, wrapping paper tearing, the chaos of a household that still had life in it. Hi, Dad. Sorry it's quick, we're heading to Brian's parents in an hour. How are you? Fine. Did you eat something I know you forget when you're alone? I ate. Good. A crash on her end. Someone crying. I gotta go. Oh, Dad, even Thomas asked about you. He saw something on the news, I think, some local story. Richard's hand tightened on the phone. Thomas asked about me. Yeah, surprised me too. Anyway, love you. Merry Christmas. The line went dead. At 2:00 in the afternoon, Richard called Thomas. Voicemail. The same generic recording his youngest son had kept for 3 years. Richard hung up without leaving a message. He sat in the study with the fire burning low. Sasha lay at his feet. Hope had worn himself out chasing a tennis ball and was asleep in his box. Paws twitching. The family photographs lined the mantel, vacations to Cape Cod, birthdays in this very room. Graduations: Michael from Harvard, Rebecca from Stanford, Thomas from MIT before he dropped out to start his company. Somewhere along the way, those children had become strangers. A weight settled on his knee. He looked down. Sasha had risen from her bed and crossed to his chair. Her head rested on his leg, her amber eyes looking up at him. Hope stirred in his box, let out a small yip, and wobbled over to join them. He tried to climb into Richard's lap, failed, tried again. Richard lifted him up. The three of them sat together in the quiet house. Richard looked at Eleanor's photograph on the mantel. Said nothing. Did not need to. 2 weeks later, Victor Crane came to his door. January 8th, 10:14 in the morning. A knock that echoed through the empty foyer. Richard opened the door to find Victor flanked by another man younger, sharp-featured, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Wesley Morton. Richard recognized the type. Corporate litigation, reputation for ruthlessness. Mr. Thornton? Victor's smile was thin. We need to discuss the animal you've been harboring. Richard did not invite them in. What do you want? Wesley stepped forward, producing a manila folder from his briefcase. I represent Hawthorne Kennels, LLC. The German Shepherd currently in your possession, registered name Sasha, is their property. She was contracted to Sunrise Meadows Senior Living for their therapy program. When the contract ended, she was to be returned to Hawthorne for breeding purposes. Richard's jaw tightened. Breeding purposes. Sasha is a purebred German Shepherd with documented lineage. Valuable stock. Wesley opened the folder, extracted several pages. According to these records, she became pregnant while at Sunrise Meadows. An unauthorized pregnancy. She was supposed to be returned immediately, but a staff member released her instead. Released. Richard's voice was flat. You mean dumped in the middle of December? Wesley continued as if he had not spoken. Hawthorne Kennels is requesting the return of their property. That includes any offspring. You want Hope? The puppy is also Hawthorne property. Mr. Thornton, legally speaking, Richard looked at Victor. The administrator stood slightly behind Wesley, watching with barely concealed satisfaction. This was not about the dog. This was payback. And if I refuse, Wesley tucked the folder under his arm, then we pursue legal action, theft, conversion of property. It will be public, expensive, and unpleasant for everyone involved. Especially you, Victor added. The press loves stories about billionaires and their pets. Very relatable. From inside the house, a sound the click of claws on hardwood. Sasha appeared in the hallway behind Richard, drawn by the voices. She stopped when she saw the strangers, her body going rigid. She positioned herself between them and the study doorway, between them and Hope. "Get out," Victor blinked. "Excuse me." Richard opened the door wider. "You heard me. Get off my property." Wesley's composure slipped. "Mr. Thornton, you're making a serious mistake. Maybe, but not today." He waited. Neither man moved. "Now," Richard said. "Or I call the police and have you escorted." Victor's face reddened. "You'll regret this. Thornton, I promise you that. I've made enough mistakes in my life. This ain't gonna be one of them." He closed the door in their faces. 4 nights later. Richard woke to barking. Not Sasha's usual sounds, this was frantic. High-pitched, wrong. He threw off the covers and ran down the hallway, his bare feet slapping against the cold hardwood. The study, the fire had burned down to embers. Sasha was standing over Hope's box, barking and whining, her whole body trembling. Richard dropped to his knees. Hope was lying on his side. His breathing came in short, shallow gasps. His eyes were open but unfocused, glazed with something that looked like fever. "No, no, no, no." Richard scooped up the puppy. The small body burned against his hands. Too hot, way too hot. He grabbed his phone, dialed Claire's number. It rang 4 times. 5, 6. "Hello." Her voice was thick with sleep. "It's Thornton. Something's wrong with Hope. He's burning up. He won't respond. Bring him in. Now." Richard did not bother changing. He wrapped Hope in a blanket, carried Sasha to the car, and drove through the empty streets at twice the speed limit. Freezing rain spattered the windshield. The wipers beat a frantic rhythm. The clinic was dark except for a single light in the back. Claire met him at the door, still pulling on her white coat. "How long has he been like this?" "I don't know. I just found him." She took the puppy, her hands moving with practiced efficiency, checked his gums, his eyes, pressed 2 fingers against his tiny chest. "Fever's at least 105, maybe higher." She was already walking toward the back. Richard following. When did he last eat? Yesterday evening. He seemed fine, active, hungry. Any vomiting, diarrhea? Richard tried to remember. The day had been busy: lawyers, phone calls, the endless paperwork Harold kept sending over. "I don't know. I wasn't watching closely enough." Claire did not respond. She placed Hope in an incubator, started an IV, attached monitors that began beeping immediately. "What is it?" Richard asked. "What's wrong with him?" Claire's face was grim. "Parvo. That's my best guess. It's a virus common in puppies, especially ones that were malnourished at birth." She paused. "Can be deadly if not caught early." Richard's chest tightened. "Can you save him?" Claire adjusted the IV drip, checked the monitors. Her movements were precise, controlled, but Richard could see the tension in her shoulders. "I've seen puppies in worse shape pull through. He's got his mother's stubbornness." She turned to face him. "But the next 48 hours will tell us everything. He needs fluids, antivirals, constant monitoring. Even then..." She did not finish the sentence. Richard looked at Hope through the incubator's glass walls. The puppy's chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. The monitors beeped in irregular patterns. In the other room, Sasha began to howl. Low, mournful, the sound of something breaking. She knew. Dogs always knew. Richard pulled out his phone, dialed Harold. "Richard, it's 3 a.m. I need that lawyer, Diana Reeves, today." What happened? Richard watched Hope's tiny body fight for each breath. They want the dogs, Harold, and they're not going to stop? Day 2. Hope's fever would not break. Richard sat in the clinic's waiting room on the same plastic chair he had occupied for 36 hours. His clothes were rumpled, stained with coffee he did not remember spilling. His chin was covered in gray stubble. His eyes burned from exhaustion. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The vending machine hummed in the corner, somewhere in the back. Monitors beeped their steady rhythm. At 10:47 in the morning, a man in a suit walked through the front door. Wesley Morton, Victor's lawyer. He carried a manila envelope in one hand. Richard stood. His knees protested. "Mr. Thornton," Wesley's voice was smooth, practiced. "My client has been more than patient. Hawthorne Kennels is prepared to pursue legal action for theft and conversion of property unless both animals are returned within 72 hours. He held out the envelope. Richard did not take it. "The puppy is dying." "That's unfortunate, but it doesn't change the legal reality." Wesley set the envelope on the reception desk. 72 hours. Mr. Thornton, after that, this gets very public, very expensive. He turned and walked out. Richard stared at the envelope. The words blurred. His hands were shaking. Victor had done this. Victor and his expensive lawyers, making threats while hope fought for every breath. His phone buzzed. A text from Harold Tern on Channel 4. Richard walked to the waiting room television, found the remote, changed the channel. His own face stared back at him. A photograph from 3 years ago, some charity gala. Him in a tuxedo, champagne glass in hand. Underneath, the headline, "Billionaire in legal battle over stray dog." The anchor's voice filled the room. "Richard Thornton, real estate mogul and one of Connecticut's wealthiest residents, is at the center of an unusual custody dispute. Sources say Thornton has been keeping 2 dogs that legally belong to a local breeding operation, refusing to return them despite multiple requests." The segment cut to Victor Crane, standing in front of Sunrise Meadows, wearing his most sympathetic expression. "We're just trying to do the right thing," Victor said into the camera. "These animals belong to Hawthorne Kennels. Mr. Thornton's behavior has been erratic. We're concerned." Back to the anchor. "Court documents show the dogs are valued at over $15,000. Critics have called this a case of a wealthy individual using his resources to circumvent the law." Richard turned off the television. His phone was already buzzing. Texts, voicemails, the vultures were circling. One text stood out. "Michael, Dad, what the hell? You're on the news." Richard called him back. "Michael, is this true? You're in a legal fight over a stray dog. It's complicated. The dog was abused. I don't care about the dog. Dad," Michael's voice was tight, angry. "I care about this being on television. Do you have any idea how this looks? Billionaire hoards strays. I've already gotten 3 calls from board members asking if you've lost your mind. Michael, listen to me. No, you listen. I can't deal with this right now. I've got a presentation in an hour, a deal falling apart, and now I have to explain to people why my father is on the news fighting about a dog." A pause. "Just figure it out. Okay. Handle it like you handle everything else." The line went dead. Richard stood in the middle of the waiting room, phone in hand. The receptionist Jenny was watching him with something that looked like pity. An elderly couple in the corner whispered to each other, stealing glances. They had seen the news. They knew who he was. Richard Thornton, billionaire. Crazy old man fighting over strays. He sat back down in the plastic chair. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The vending machine hummed. 60 hours without real sleep. 60 hours of watching Hope's tiny body fight for each breath. 60 hours of listening to Sasha howl in the other room, calling for her puppy. And now this. His phone rang again. Rebecca. Dad, I talked to Michael. And Thomas. Richard closed his eyes. Thomas talked to you. We think. Rebecca's voice was careful, measured, the same tone she used in depositions. Maybe you should talk to someone, a professional, about the grief. There it was. You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing us. I'm handling it. Dad. You're on TV fighting about a stray dog. Mom just died. This isn't normal behavior. None of you were at her funeral. Silence. That's not fair, Rebecca said quietly. Richard's hand tightened around the phone. No, it isn't. He hung up. The waiting room felt smaller now, the walls closer, the lights brighter, the whispers louder. Richard Thornton, 68 years old, worth $2.3 billion, sat on a plastic chair in a veterinary clinic wearing clothes he had slept in. Stubble on his chin, his family's disappointment ringing in his ears. He had built an empire. Closed deals that made history, been on the cover of Forbes 3 times. And here he was, fighting for a dog, losing his children, being called crazy on the evening news. Maybe they were right. Maybe he had lost his mind. Richard stood up. His legs felt weak. His head throbbed. He walked toward the exit. Behind him. Sasha's howl rose from the back room. Long, mournful, the sound of something that refused to stop calling out. Richard's hand touched the door. The glass was cold. The parking lot was dark. His car waited outside empty house, empty bottle, empty bed. He could leave. Walk away. Let Victor have the dogs, let the lawyers sort it out. Go back to the mansion. Pour the scotch. Wait for it all to be over. Nobody would blame him. Nobody would even be surprised. Sasha howled again. The sound cut through the buzzing lights, the humming machines, the whispers of strangers. Richard stopped, his hand on the glass, the cold seeping into his palm. He thought about the parking lot. December 14th. A broken dog dragging herself through the snow. Carrying her dying puppy. Placing him at a stranger's feet. Why him? Not the nurses, not the doctors, not anyone else in that lot. She had walked past all of them, chosen his car. Why Eleanor's voice, soft and certain? You're not as cold as you pretend. Richard. I've always known. Richard took his hand off the door. He turned around, walked back to the plastic chair, sat down. Okay, he whispered. To no one. To everyone. I'm still here. The monitors beeped. Sasha fell silent, and somewhere in the incubator in the back room, Hope's fever finally broke. A week after Hope's fever broke, a woman walked into the clinic, 71 years old, silver hair cut short and practical, a cane in her right hand, a titanium hip beneath her wool coat. She moved slowly but with purpose, scanning the waiting room until her eyes found Richard. You're the one from the news, she said. The billionaire with the dog. Richard looked up. He had slept in fragments over the past 7 days, catching hours here and there between Hope's checkups. The puppy was improving slowly, carefully, but still too weak to leave the incubator for more than a few minutes at a time. Who are you, Miss Margaret Collins? Maggie. She lowered herself into the plastic chair beside him. Your friend Harold found me. Said you needed someone who knew what happened at Sunrise Meadows. Richard straightened. You knew Sasha. Knew her. Maggie let out a dry, papery laugh. That dog saved my life. Not literally, but close enough. I was at Sunrise Meadows for 14 months. Hip replacement. Then complications. Then more complications. 87 days in that place. No visitors. My husband dead 2 years. My daughter too busy to call. Then Sasha started coming to my room. She paused. Her eyes went distant. She'd show up every afternoon, 3 o'clock, like clockwork. Didn't need anything from me. Didn't want treats or attention, just sat there. Let me pet her. Let me talk. Maggie's voice softened. She knew when I was having a bad day before I did. Some days she'd put her head in my lap and stay for hours. Richard thought about Sasha positioning herself between him and Victor's lawyer, protecting Hope. Protecting him. What happened to her? Maggie's expression hardened. New administrator came in, Victor Crane. First thing he did was cut the therapy program. Said it was too expensive, too much liability. Sasha was the last dog they had. She shook her head. I asked what would happen to her. They said she'd go back to the kennel. Standard procedure. Hawthorne Kennels? That's the one. Maggie leaned forward on her cane. I did some digging after I got out. Made calls. That place isn't a kennel. Mr. Thornton, it's a puppy mill with better paperwork. They breed dogs until they can't breed anymore, then dispose of them. Sasha wasn't producing fast enough. They disciplined her. Richard's jaw tightened. The scars on Sasha's back, the broken leg, the hollow eyes of an animal that had learned to expect pain. How did she escape? Jumped a fence. From what I heard, hurt her leg landing. Then she walked. Maggie's voice caught. More than a week. Mr. Thornton. Over a week on that leg. No food, no water. In December, she walked all the way back toward Sunrise Meadows, the only place anyone had ever been kind to her. But the facility was closed for renovations. Gates locked. So she kept going. Found you instead. Richard sat with that. More than a week. 10 miles. Maybe more. A broken leg and 3 puppies in her belly, 2 of whom had not survived the journey. Will you testify? He asked. In court? Maggie smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen in weeks. Honey, I'm 71 years old with a titanium hip and nothing but time. They want to fight, I'll give them one. Claire appeared in the doorway. Mr. Thornton. Richard stood, his chest tightened. Hope's responding well. His temperature's been normal for 3 days now. He's eating on his own. Claire was smiling tired, relieved, genuine. He's going to make it. Richard did not cheer, did not celebrate, just stood there, processing the words. Then a sound escaped him, something between a laugh and a sob. He pressed a hand to his mouth. You stubborn little... He could not finish, did not need to. Claire brought him to the recovery room. Hope lay in a small bed now. No longer in the incubator, his eyes were bright. His tail wagged weakly when he saw Richard. Can Sasha see him? Claire nodded. Briefly, she's been calmer since the fever broke. I think she knows. She brought Sasha in slowly, carefully. The mother dog's tail wagged the moment she saw her puppy. She could not reach him yet, but she lay down, facing his bed, watching, waiting. She had waited more than a week in the cold. She could wait a little longer. 3 weeks later, Richard sat in the Westbrook County Courthouse. Early February, gray light through tall windows, the smell of old wood and floor polish. Diana Reeves, the animal law specialist Harold had found, sat beside him, across the aisle. Wesley Morton shuffled papers, his expression tight. Victor Crane sat behind him, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Maggie Collins took the stand. She told her story, the therapy program, Sasha's gentle presence, Victor Crane's cuts, the return to Hawthorne Kennels. And you have documentation of the kennel's practices? Diana asked. Letters, emails. Testimonies from 3 former employees. Maggie looked at Victor. I've been busy. Wesley cross-examined. Tried to discredit her, a bitter old woman with a grudge against the administrator. Maggie did not flinch. I'm 71 years old. counselor, I've buried a husband, survived 2 surgeries, and spent 14 months in a facility that treated its animals better than its patients until Mr. Crane arrived. I know what I saw. I know what that dog looked like when they sent her back." Victor Crane took the stand next. Under Diana's questioning, his composure cracked. "You authorized Sasha's return to Hawthorne Kennels. Standard procedure. Despite knowing their reputation, I had no knowledge of. We have emails. Mr. Crane, from your own staff, would you like me to read them into the record?" Victor's face went red, then white. The judge had seen enough. "Custody of both animals is awarded to Mr. Thornton. Hawthorne Kennels is referred to the district attorney's office for investigation. Mr. Crane, you will implement oversight protocols at your facility within 30 days, and you will face separate review for the statements made in your court filings." The gavel came down. Outside the courthouse, a reporter approached. "Mr. Thornton, any comment?" Richard started to wave her off, then stopped. "Just one thing." He looked into the camera. That dog walked for more than a week on a broken leg to find someone who'd help her baby. I just wrote some checks. She's the one who wouldn't give up. He walked away before they could ask anything else. In the parking lot, his phone buzzed. A text from a number he had not seen in months. "Thomas, I saw the video. Can we talk? Late February, 6:15 in the morning." Richard woke before the alarm. Gray light filtered through the bedroom curtains. The house was quiet, but not silent, not anymore. A scratching sound at the door, then a soft whine. He pulled on his robe and opened it. Sasha stood in the hallway, tail swaying. Her limp still visible, but her movement stronger each day. Behind her, Hope bounced on oversized paws, all ears and energy and clumsy enthusiasm. "Morning," Richard said. Sasha's tail wagged harder. They walked the back property together, the 3 of them. Fresh snow from last night covered the lawn in an unbroken sheet of white. Richard's breath fogged in the cold air. His boots crunched through the crust with each step. Sasha paused to investigate a scent near the old oak tree. Hope barreled into her from behind, sending both dogs tumbling into a snowdrift. They emerged, covered in white, shaking themselves off. Hope already bouncing toward the next distraction. Richard smiled. Back inside, the kitchen filled with the smell of coffee brewing. He sat at the table with the morning paper actually sat, instead of standing at the counter the way he had for months. Sasha lay beside his chair, her warm weight against his ankle. Hope chewed a rubber toy under the table, growling at it between bites. The house was not quiet anymore. Click of claws on hardwood, rustle of fur against the chair leg, the small, ordinary sounds of living things. Richard looked at Eleanor's photograph on the windowsill, the one from their trip to Maine, 20 years ago. She was laughing at something he had said, her hair windblown, her eyes bright. He did not say anything, just looked. Then he reached down, scratched Sasha behind the ear. She sighed and settled deeper against his leg. That afternoon, his phone rang. "Thomas." Richard set down his coffee, stared at the screen for a long moment, then answered. "Tom?" Silence on the other end. Static. The faint hum of a connection spanning 3,000 miles. "Dad?" Thomas's voice was rough, uncertain. I saw that video. From the courthouse." Richard waited. "You looked different." "Different how?" A pause. Richard could hear his youngest son breathing, searching for words that did not come easy. "Like you actually gave a damn about something." The words hung in the air. "I should have been there," Thomas said. "At the funeral, at the hospital. I should have—" His voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Dad." "Tom, yeah, it's okay. The silence, but different now. Something had shifted. "Can I come visit?" Thomas asked quietly. "Maybe meet the dogs." Richard closed his eyes. 42 years of marriage, 3 children he had never been there for, a wife he had lost, a house that had felt like a tomb. And now this? A phone call? A question? A door opening. "I'd like that," he said. "I'd like that very much." After the call, Richard sat in the study. The fire crackled low in the hearth. Outside, snow fell in lazy spirals past the windows. Hope had climbed into his lap too big for it, did not seem to care, and was snoring softly, paws twitching in some puppy dream. Sasha lay at his feet, her head resting on his shoe. Richard looked at Eleanor's photograph on the mantel. "Don't disappear into that house. Richard, promise me." He had not kept that promise. Not at first. But something had found him anyway. A dog who had every reason to quit. Who did not. Who carried her dying puppy through more than a week of snow and pain and placed him at a stranger's feet. And somewhere in that moment, in seeing her, in being seen, Richard had found his way back. He stood, stretched, walked to the kitchen to start dinner. Sasha followed, click of claws on hardwood. Hope scrambled after them, sliding on the floor, crashing into the doorframe, recovering without embarrassment. The house filled with small sounds. Life, moving forward. Some stories leave us sitting quietly for a moment after they end. This one might be like that, a weight that settles somewhere in the chest. Familiar and tender, not quite ready to be named. Many of us have known that particular silence of an empty house, the sound of a phone that does not ring, the long afternoons when we wonder if anyone remembers we are still here. Some of us have sat in parking lots, not ready to go home, not sure where else to go, and perhaps some of us have been found in those moments by something unexpected, something that asked nothing of us except to show up. It is all right if this story stirred something that does not have easy words. It is okay if you are thinking of someone you have not called, or someone who has not called you. These things do not need to be fixed tonight. They are allowed to rest, just as they are. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening.